I stood in the lobby of Morrison and Associates, the law firm I'd helped my son build from nothing, and the receptionist looked at me like I was selling insurance. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, not even glancing up from her computer screen. "I'm here for the Thanksgiving dinner," I said. "I'm Robert Chen, Mark's father." She frowned, scrolling through something on her screen. "I don't see you on the guest list, sir. Are you sure you're supposed to be here?" 23 years. That's how long I'd been teaching calculus at Riverside Secondary School. I'd saved every spare dollar, lived in the same modest bungalow in East Vancouver for 30 years, drove the same '08 Corolla until the wheels nearly fell off. All of it so my son Mark could go to UBC Law School without drowning in debt, so he could article at a top firm, so he could eventually open his own practice. And now his receptionist didn't even know who I was. "I'm on the list," I said quietly. "Mark invited me himself." She sighed, picked up the phone. "Mr. Morrison? There's a Robert Chen here? Says he's supposed to be at the dinner?" A pause. "Okay." She hung up and pointed to the elevators without looking at me. 15th floor. "Someone will meet you." The elevator had mirrors on 3 sides. I caught my reflection and understood why she'd been confused. I was wearing my good sweater, the navy cardigan my daughter Sarah had given me last Christmas. But next to the oil paintings and marble floors of this lobby, I looked exactly like what I was. A retired teacher who still shopped at Value Village and got his hair cut at the barber college. The elevator doors opened on 15, and I stepped into a different world. Floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Vancouver's harbor. The North Shore mountains dusted with early snow. Catered tables lined with food I couldn't pronounce. At least 60 people, all dressed like they'd just stepped out of a yacht club. "Dad." Mark appeared, his smile tight. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. His wife Vanessa glided up beside him in a black dress and heels that made her tower over me. "You made it," Mark said, and there was something in his voice. Relief? Annoyance? I couldn't tell anymore. "I brought butter tarts," I said, holding up the Tupperware container. I'd made them that morning, my mother's recipe. Mark used to devour them when he was a kid. Vanessa's eyes flicked to the container, then away. "How thoughtful," she said. "We'll just put those in the kitchen." She took them from me with 2 fingers, like they might contaminate her. "Let me show you to your table, Dad," Mark said. I followed him through the crowd. People were laughing, drinking wine from actual crystal glasses. I recognized some of the faces from the photo in Mark's office. His partners, the associates, a city councilor. Mark walked past all of them, past the tables near the windows with the views, past the tables where his partners were sitting. He stopped at a small table in the corner, near the hallway to the bathrooms. There were 3 people already sitting there, all of them looking as out of place as I felt. "Dad, this is table 12, Mark said. "Figured you'd be more comfortable here. Less formal." I looked at the table. There were name cards. Mine said Robert Chen, guest. Not father of the founder. Not even Mark's dad. Just guest. "Mark," I said slowly, "where are you sitting?" He gestured vaguely toward the front. "Head table, with Vanessa and the partners. We've got some clients there too. Important people. You understand." I looked at the head table. It sat 12. Mark's 3 partners and their spouses. The city councilor and her husband. That left 2 empty seats. "Those empty seats," I said. "Who are those for?" Mark shifted his weight. "Vanessa's parents are flying in from Toronto. They're landing any minute." Something cold settled in my chest. Vanessa's parents, who I'd met exactly once at the wedding, got seats at the head table. I got table 12. In the corner, by the bathrooms. "I see," I said. It's a networking thing, Dad. Business. You know how it is." I didn't know. I'd spent my whole career in a classroom full of teenagers trying to teach them that X equals more than just a letter. I'd never learned how to rank human beings by their usefulness. "Sure," I said. "I understand." Mark looked relieved. "Great. Dinner starts in 20 minutes. There's a bar over there if you want a drink." He was already walking away before I could respond. I sat down at table 12. The 3 other people introduced themselves. Janet, who worked in accounting. Michael, who did something with IT. And Patricia, Mark's assistant's mother, who lived in Burnaby and looked as confused about being here as I felt. We made awkward small talk. I learned that Janet had been asking for a raise for 6 months. Michael had submitted a complaint about workplace safety that got ignored. Patricia's daughter worked 70-hour weeks and barely got acknowledged. I didn't tell them what I'd done for Mark. I didn't tell them about the $340,000. 5 years ago, Mark had called me on a Tuesday night. I still remember because I was marking midterms, and I almost didn't answer. "Dad," he'd said, and his voice had that edge it gets when something's really wrong. "I need your help." He'd wanted to leave his firm and start his own practice. He had 2 other lawyers ready to join him as partners, but they needed capital. Office space, equipment, staff, operating expenses for the first year until the clients started coming in. The bank would only loan them $200,000. They needed $500,000 to do it right. "How much do you need from me?" I'd asked. "I know it's a lot, Dad. I know you were saving that for retirement, but how much, Mark?" $340,000. It was every dollar I had. The pension I'd been contributing to for 23 years, which I'd just rolled into an RRSP when I retired. The life insurance payout from when Ellen, my wife, had died. The small inheritance from my parents. Every single cent I'd managed to save in 63 years of life. "I'll have it by Friday," I'd told him. "Dad, I'll pay you back, I promise. 5 years maximum, with interest. I'll put it in writing." He had put it in writing. I had the promissory note in my safety deposit box at the credit union. 5 years, 6% interest, balloon payment at the end. It came to $455,000, due this November. That was 2 weeks ago. I'd called Mark to ask about the payment, not to pressure him, just to check in. The note was coming due. "Oh, right," he'd said. "Listen, Dad, can we talk about that? The firm's doing really well, but we're in a growth phase. We just took out a loan to hire 3 new associates. If I pull out that much cash right now, it'll hurt our expansion." "Mark, that's my retirement money." I know. But look, what if we restructure? I'll pay you monthly. Same total amount. Just spread over. Let's say 10 years? That's $3,800 a month. Way more manageable. $340,000 today. Or $3,800 a month for 10 years. I wasn't a math teacher for nothing. That was $456,000 total. Almost the same amount with interest. But spread over 10 years, it meant Mark kept control of my money for another decade. And if the firm went under, or if something happened to Mark, I'd be out of luck. The note says balloon payment, Mark. That's what we agreed to. Dad, be reasonable. You don't even need that money right now. You've got your pension. You own your house. What are you going to spend $340,000 on? That's when I'd known. He wasn't planning to pay me back. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. I was sitting at table 12, watching Mark work the room, when Vanessa's parents arrived. Lawrence and Diane Fletcher, dressed like they were attending a gala at the Four Seasons. Mark rushed over, all smiles, escorting them to the head table. I watched as he pulled out Diane's chair, poured Lawrence a drink, introduced them to the city councilor. He never once looked toward table 12. Dinner was served. Herb-crusted salmon with some kind of reduction sauce. Roasted vegetables I didn't recognize. Janet whispered that the caterer charged $200 per plate. I thought about my butter tarts, probably sitting in a kitchen garbage can somewhere. I ate mechanically, barely tasting the food. Across the room, I could hear Lawrence Fletcher's booming laugh. He was telling some story about golfing with a Supreme Court justice. Everyone at the head table was hanging on his words. After dinner, Mark stood up to give a speech. He thanked his partners. He thanked the associates for their hard work. He thanked Vanessa for her support. He thanked his in-laws for flying in from Toronto. He thanked the caterer. He did not mention me. I sat there, in my Value Village sweater, at table 12 by the bathrooms, and I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Something colder than that. Clarity, maybe. The speeches ended. People started mingling again. I stood up, nodded to Janet and Michael and Patricia, and walked toward the elevator. Mark intercepted me in the hallway. "Leaving already?" he asked. "We haven't even cut the cake yet." I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this person? And I'd just been too busy being proud to notice. "I need to ask you something," I said, "and I want an honest answer." He glanced over his shoulder. like he was worried someone might overhear us. "Sure, Dad. What's up? Were you ever planning to pay me back?" His face went carefully blank. "What are you talking about?" "I told you. We'll restructure the—" "Mark. Yes or no? Were you ever planning to give me back my $340,000? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Dad, you have to understand. That money helped build something. This firm employs 18 people now. We do pro bono work. We're making a real difference in— yes or no?" He looked at me, and I saw the truth in his eyes before he said a word. "You're my father," he said finally. "You're supposed to help me. That's what parents do." There it was. Not "thank you." Not "I'm sorry." Just entitlement. Pure and simple. I nodded slowly. "I see. Thank you for the honest answer." "Dad, don't be like this. It's Thanksgiving. Can't we just— enjoy your dinner, Mark?" I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. Mark stood there, watching me, but he didn't follow. The doors opened. I stepped inside. Just before they closed, I heard him call out, "Dad, wait." The doors shut. I drove home in my 12-year-old Corolla, through streets full of autumn leaves, past houses decorated with Thanksgiving wreaths. I'd never felt so invisible in my life. When I got home, I sat in my kitchen and made a phone call. "Sarah, it's Dad. I need your help with something." My daughter, who taught art at an elementary school in Burnaby, who lived in a one-bedroom apartment she could barely afford, who'd somehow stayed kind despite having every reason not to be, listened as I explained what I needed. "Dad," she said when I finished, "are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." "Okay. I know someone. A lawyer. I'll text you her number." The lawyer's name was Grace Tanaka. She had an office in a strip mall in Coquitlam and charged a quarter of what Mark's firm would have. "You have a promissory note?" she asked, scanning the document I'd brought. "Signed and witnessed. Due November 30th. That's 2 weeks from now. And he's refusing to pay? He wants to restructure. I don't want to restructure. I want my money." Grace looked at me over her reading glasses. "Mr. Chen, I have to ask. Is this your son?" "It is. And you understand that if we pursue this, it could damage your relationship permanently?" I thought about Table 12. About the name card that said guest. About Mark thanking the caterer, but not his father. "I understand," I said. "Okay then, let's get started." The letter went out 3 days later. Formal demand for payment under the terms of the promissory note. Payment in full by November 30th, or we'd file a lawsuit. Mark called me that evening. I didn't answer. He called 4 more times. Then Vanessa called. I didn't answer her either. Finally, he showed up at my house. I saw his BMW pull up outside and I almost didn't open the door. But I did. "Dad, what the hell is this?" He was waving the letter. "You're suing me? I'm asking you to honor the agreement you signed." "Over money? You're going to destroy our relationship over money?" I looked at my son, standing on the porch of the house where he'd grown up, where Ellen had taught him to ride a bike in the driveway, where he'd studied for his LSATs at the kitchen table. "You destroyed it the moment you seated me at table 12, I said quietly. "That's what this is about? The seating arrangement? Dad," I explained. "You seated your wife's parents at the head table, people you've met 3 times. But your father, who gave you everything he had, who made it possible for you to even have that firm, gets put in the corner by the bathrooms like some stranger you're obligated to feed. That's not fair. It was a business dinner. I had to. You had 2 empty seats, Mark. 2. And you chose to fill them with the Fletchers instead of making room for me. That told me everything I needed to know about what I'm worth to you." He was quiet for a moment. "Then, you're really going to do this? Take me to court? Pay me what you owe me by November 30th, and there won't be any court. I don't have $340,000 just sitting around. Then I guess you'll have to figure it out. You're a lawyer. I'm sure you'll think of something." I started to close the door. "Dad, wait, please. Can we just talk about this?" "We are talking about it. I want my money. You have until November 30th. I closed the door. November 30th came and went. No payment. No call. Nothing. Grace filed the lawsuit on December 1st. Mark's response came through his own lawyer, someone from a big downtown firm. They claimed the note was a gift disguised as a loan, and that I had no intention of actually collecting. They claimed I'd verbally agreed to restructure the payments. They claimed undue hardship. It was all lies, but they were well-written lies. This is going to get ugly, Grace warned me. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Mark's face at Thanksgiving, the way he'd looked relieved when I'd said I understood about the seating, like he'd gotten away with something. I'm prepared, I said. Discovery was brutal. Mark's lawyers demanded every financial record I had, trying to prove I didn't actually need the money. They deposed Sarah, asking her invasive questions about our family dynamics, trying to paint me as a vindictive father, trying to control his son. But Grace was thorough. She had the signed promissory note. She had my bank records showing the wire transfer of $340,000. She had emails from Mark promising to pay me back. She had the audio recording I'd made of our phone conversation, where he'd asked to restructure. In British Columbia, you only need one-party consent to record a call. Mark had taught me that years ago, when he was studying evidence law. The irony wasn't lost on me. The trial was set for March. But in February, Mark's lawyer called Grace with a settlement offer. They want to pay $200,000 and call it even, Grace told me. Tell them no. Mr. Chen, taking this to trial, is expensive, and there's always risk, even with a strong case. $200,000 is, tell them I want every dollar, $340,000, plus the 6% interest we agreed to. That's $455,000, not a penny less. There was a long silence. Then Grace said, "You're sure?" I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The trial lasted 3 days. Mark testified that I'd been happy to help him, that I'd understood it was an investment in his future. His lawyer painted me as a lonely old man who'd promised to support his son's dreams, and was now reneging out of spite. Then I took the stand. Grace walked me through it all. The phone call asking for money, the promise to pay me back in 5 years, the promissory note Mark had insisted on, because he wanted to do it the right way. The Thanksgiving dinner, table 12, the name card that said, guest. Mr. Chen, Grace asked, why do you think your son seated you where he did that night? Mark's lawyer objected. Relevance? The judge looked interested. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Chen. I looked at Mark, sitting at the defendant's table in his $2,000 suit. Because I was an obligation, I said. Not a father. Not the man who raised him. Just someone he had to feed, like the caterer he thanked in his speech. I'd served my purpose. I'd given him the money. Now I was just in the way. The judge awarded me the full amount, $455,000, plus court costs and legal fees. Total came to $478,000. Mark had to take out a loan to pay it. I heard through Sarah that it nearly destroyed the firm. They had to let go of 6 associates, cancel their expansion plans. Mark and Vanessa had to sell their condo in Cole Harbor and move to a rental in Burnaby. I didn't feel good about it, but I didn't feel bad either. I felt settled. Sarah helped me invest the money properly this time. We put most of it in a diversified portfolio, kept some liquid for emergencies, and I used $150,000 to do something I'd been thinking about for years. I bought a small commercial space in East Van and turned it into a community tutoring center. Free math help for kids whose families couldn't afford the expensive tutoring services. Sarah volunteered to teach art classes there on weekends. We hired 2 other retired teachers part-time. We called it the Ellen Chen Learning Center, after my wife. Mark sent 1 email after the judgment was final. No subject line. Just 1 sentence. I hope you're happy now. I didn't respond. Sarah asked me once if I regretted it. We were at the learning center, watching a kid finally understand how to factor a quadratic equation, and she said, "Dad, do you ever wish you'd just let it go?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said. I spent my whole career teaching kids that actions have consequences, that you can't just take and never give back. If I'd let Mark get away with it, what would that have taught him? But he's your son. Exactly. He's my son, which means I owe him the truth, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. The truth is, you can't treat people like they're disposable just because they love you. You can't take someone's entire life savings and then act like you're doing them a favor by acknowledging they exist. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mom would be proud of you." I felt my throat tighten. "You think so?" "I know so. She always said you were the most principled person she'd ever met, even when it cost you." 2 years have passed since the trial. Mark and I haven't spoken. I heard he and Vanessa had a baby last year. A boy. Sarah showed me a picture on Facebook. He looks like Mark did when he was little. Sometimes I wonder if Mark will do it differently. If he'll teach his son about gratitude, about respect, about the fact that love isn't a transaction and family isn't a networking opportunity. But mostly, I don't think about Mark at all anymore. I think about the kids at the learning center, about the single mom who cried when I told her the tutoring was free, about the 14-year-old who came in failing math and just got accepted to UBC on a scholarship. I think about Sarah, who calls me twice a week and comes over for dinner every Sunday, who brings her boyfriend sometimes, a social worker named James who treats her like she's the most important person in the world, who asked my permission before he proposed last month, even though he didn't have to. I think about the life I'm building with the money I fought to get back. Not the one Mark stole from me, but the one I'm creating now, with intention and purpose. Last week, a kid at the learning center asked me why I did this, why I spent my retirement helping random kids with homework instead of traveling or playing golf or whatever old people are supposed to do. I told him what Ellen used to tell me, back when we were young teachers who thought we could change the world one student at a time. Because someday, someone's going to help you when you need it, and you need to know what that feels like, so you can do it for someone else. The kid nodded like he understood. I don't know if Mark ever understood that. I don't know if he ever will, but I'm not responsible for teaching him anymore. I did that job for 30 years. I gave him everything I had, everything I knew, everything I was. Now I'm teaching other people's kids. Kids who actually want to learn, who say thank you, who remember my name. And you know what? That's enough. More than enough. It's everything.